recorded in landscape, and I didn't realize because in the thumbnails it looks normal, but when you open up the live, it rotates. So apologies for that, Facebookers. All right, got some cheese today because we're going into so much stuff here. All right, what is it like to really relocate to Kenya? Now, the experience of relocation is dramatically different depending on whether or not you relocated professionally or not, right? So, if you relocated with either Traverse Culture or Diaspora Freedom Initiative, your experience is incredibly different than if you try to like relocate on your own, right? So most of your horror stories come from do-it-yourself relocators, and then they have the worst experience. It just is what it is. The other horror stories come from dealing with fake relocation companies, and then they also have horror stories, unfortunately. So there's that. No real need to get into that. It's kind of self-explanatory. Beyond that, what's your experience like when you relocate with a professional team? The professional team should be questioning your assumptions. So if you're not getting questioned, at least like you're in your initial consultation or something like that, then it's probably worth it to go ahead and talk to a second team and get a second opinion. Now, if you are a squared away person and you know whether you're a squared away person or not. So if you're a squared away person and you're the type of person that shows up with like your lists and you know exactly what you want and you've done the due diligence, that's a different situation. You know damn well if you're that kind of person or not. All right. So if you show up and you're always prepared and you got all the questions and you've done all the background, that's a different situation. They're not going to question you. You're squared away. But if this is just something that you kind of want to do, don't know how to get started, you've gotten a consultation with somebody and they're just agreeing with everything, they're not challenging anything, then you're not working with a specialist. Okay. Specialists challenge what you say. All right. Think of a doctor. You walk into the doctor's office and you say, I asked ChatGPT why I have a headache, and it said it's a brain aneurysm. So you need to do brain surgery on me right now. If the doctor says yes, they're a quack, right? The doctor should push back and question you because even though you're paying the doctor, they are a specialist. They don't just do brain surgery because you walked in and said, ChatGPT told me I have a brain aneurysm. Do surgery now, right? They push back because they're a specialist, right? They're going to let you know what you need, even though you're paying them. And if you don't like it, you can walk. That's a specialist, okay? Same thing with college. You don't get to walk into college and tell the college professor, you work for me, I'm paying you, and so you're going to do X, Y, and Z. No, you're going to, give me this homework that I have given you, these assignments that I have given you, even though you're paying me, because I'm the specialist, right? So if you're working with a specialist, they're not just going to listen to you and yes, 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 okay, okay. No, they're going to push back and say, listen, if you want to succeed at this, this is the way it has to go. If you want to come over here and be broke and not have anything and end up going home with nothing, then you can do all those things that you want to do, that you have no experience in how to relocate. You have no experience on the laws, of the country you're going to. You're talking to a specialist, but if you want to push that narrative, that's on you. But I'm not going to assist you with that and set you up for failure, right? That's what a specialist should do. You already know this, right? You already know that if you go to a doctor, the doctor's going to tell you what's wrong. You're not going to tell the doctor what's wrong, right? You already know that if you go to college, the college professor is going to teach you whatever you need to learn in order to get the degree. You're not going to teach him, even though you've hired him, even though you're paying the school, even though you're the one paying. When you're dealing with a specialist, they're going to tell you what to do. We already understand this. Okay, so make sure that you're paying attention when you're dealing with a specialist who now has literally the lives of your family and you in their hand, and you're going through this relocation process. Do not just allow yes men to acquiesce, take your money, and then set you up for failure. Right? Huge, huge, huge problem that happens all the time. All right. So make sure that you're working with specialists. They will push back. You might not like everything you hear, but they're going to tell you what's really going on. And if you keep pushing down a path that's bad for you, they should drop you as a client, right? They should not assist you in setting yourself up for failure. All right. So it shouldn't just be about some money. Like, oh, you got some money. I'm just going to take your money and do whatever you say. No, that's not the way specialists work. All right. Okay. Now, we wanted to get into some myth busting, some how does it really feel when you're here, what to really expect when you are here. All right, your experience is going to change based on who assisted you in coming here. That is number one. Okay. Beyond that, you have to figure out what it is that's most important to you. That's what's going to let you know, and what it is that you plan to do in the future. That's what's going to let you know if it's even appropriate to come here specifically, right? A lot of folks that, like, our territory is Kenya, period. We only do Kenya. A lot of folks that do that, no matter where is best for you and your goals, they're pushing Kenya because they want that paycheck. You want to make sure that you're dealing with somebody who will tell you, nope, this is not the place for you. Sorry, can't take your money. You're going to have to go somewhere else. And if somewhere else might be, then I'll point you in that direction. And if I don't, then, I'm not going to, give you any kind of weird fraudulent information. You just got to go figure it out and do your own due diligence, right? That's important. It's important to know why you're going and what you're about to do in that place to be able to figure out whether that place lines up with you, properly. Okay. If you have no goals, then I suppose anywhere would work. There are some kind of, like flower child people that don't really have any goals and they just go wherever. That's a rare situation. But if you want something out of your relocation, or you want something specific for your family, then you want to make sure that those things are not only there, but those things are incentivized where they can be incentivized. Okay. A huge example of that right now is what a lot of people are going through with Tanzania, right? Tanzania, of course, allowed business and all that, but they never incentivized anything, right? A lot of people went there. They did a lot of nonprofit-esque businesses like orphanages and building schools for kids. And they did a lot of that stuff, give back to the community type businesses, blah, 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 right? And now Tanzania just up and passed the law and said, look, no foreigners can be in these 15 or 16, fields. And one of them is small business, right? SME is on the list, right? So if you had a small orphanage and it's an SME, right? You're no longer allowed to do that business as a foreigner. So now all of those people are fucked, right? It just is what it is. So that's the difference between finding a place where you're allowed to do something and a place where you're incentivized to do something. If there's a place where there are incentives to do what you want to do, that's a pretty good indication that the government's not going to turn around and betray you later, right? So you want to make sure that you go to a place where you can work hand in hand with the local people, where you can work hand in hand with the government, and everybody can benefit. All right, so that's definitely number one. Once you get that figured out, and you work backwards to figure that out, by the way. So you figure out what your goals are, and you work backwards from your goal to end up figuring out which place is best for you, okay? So get that worked out. That's kind of what you need first before you engage your relocation service, because you need to let them know, this is my goal. All right, that goal is going to inform the type of immigration they process for you, the type of permits you get when you arrive, whether you have a direct path to dual citizenship or whether you have a path to permanent residency. All of those things are going to be dictated based on what it is that you want to do. Okay, so once we figured out this is the place for you and you are on your way, what we're looking at is housing typically first, right? That's why in our vertical integration, we have an architect and a general contractor. Because how do you relocate to a place and not have a place to live, right? Housing is number one. Us personally, we feel like the maximum freedom, we are Diaspora Freedom Initiative, right? We feel like the maximum freedom is in owning your house, not having to pay rent, not having to pay any fees, because there are places that they call service communities where you own your house, but there's a service fee, kind of like an HOA fee for the rest of your life. So you own your house, but you're paying rent at the same time. It doesn't make sense to us. And so we try to make sure there are no fees, that you own your own house, that you're as off grid as you want to be. So for us, that's the focus. That is not the focus for everyone. Some people don't care about buying a house and then renting it over again for the rest of their life. So they're okay with a condo and paying condo fees or paying HOA fees or, paying service fees, forever after they've paid the full purchase price of the home, right? Some people are okay with that, right? And so, you know, our our friends in Nairobi, Traverse Culture, kind of specialize in that, right? They're the better organization for that, bar none, right? We're the better organization, in my opinion, for new build homes, right, and building houses, bar none, right? So that's what you want to look at when you're coming in and you're going ahead and you're getting your housing plan together, right? You want to make sure that you understand what it is that you're willing to pay for to you and why. Some people get an apartment for 2 years and then buy a house later. They got some kind of plan going on in the background where that makes sense. Rock out, whatever makes sense, do that, right? But make sure that you have a housing plan and that you're ready to rock on that. Make sure that you understand what your tolerance is and your situational awareness is, right? So make sure that you're picking neighborhoods that match what you're used to. In Nairobi's a big city. It's just like New York, right? Every city has its bad parts. Every city has its good parts. Make sure you know where the bad parts are and where the good parts are, and make sure that you're living in the right place, right? Sometimes there are actual expat neighborhoods. I don't know how I necessarily feel about them per se. Um, Typically for us, the type of client that resonates with our services typically wants to integrate with local people, right? The vast majority of them. But some people do act like they want some kind of mini, foreign community in another country. They exist, right? So we can't pretend that those enclaves do not exist. They do. So if people want to live there, then they need to know where they are, right? Um, in Nairobi, you're looking at places like Westlands and Parklands, Kilimani and Lavington, Karen for sure, Runda, Muthaiga, and places like that. Then there are other bubbles, right? Um, the the main one is tourist areas, right? Like I live in a tourist area, right? So not quite the same thing as like an expat enclave. Where I live in the tourist area is actually in a suburb that's local, right? But I live very close to it, so I have access to all the tourist amenities, right? So that's a different type of enclave as well. It's not an expat enclave where like only certain people are moving in there and living there, which like again isn't really my taste, but some people that's what they want. But it is a different type of enclave. So you get these bubbles, right? And inside these bubbles there's typically extra something, right? So it might be that there's extra law enforcement. Like there's a specific branch of police called tourist police, right? They're specially trained to deal with like foreigners who might not be used to the legal system, which is helpful. If you have police that have undergone some additional training, to understand that somebody might be confused or somebody might be operating on, a false premise that doesn't exist under law here, and be able to explain that calmly and whatever. That's a plus for sure, at least in my book. Especially, I think it's a plus for a lot of black folks who have had questionable interactions with police in other countries, right? So, good job to Kenya for creating the tourist police. But tourist police only exist in tourism enclaves, right? So we have access to the tourist police because we live outside of a tourism enclave, right? So that's helpful. Tourist police will also do investigations in such a way that assists international law enforcement. So that's also helpful. All right. So, it just depends on what it is that you're trying to do. All right. So, which tourist enclave? Deanna Beach. Good question. All right. So, schools are next. If you have kids, you're looking into schools, that typically ends up being the next most important thing, right? Where you're going to live is most important. That's pretty universal, right? Next thing is if you have kids, hey, how's it going? If you have kids, the schools tend to be the second most important thing. All right. So, um, there are a ton of international schools. International schools can carry their own curriculum. Okay, so you can have British curriculum, you can have American curriculum, you can have Canadian curriculum, you can have Chinese curriculum. Chinese curriculum, they call it Sino curriculum. So Sino, you see that it's Chinese. I don't know why they use a different name. I don't know, but Chinese curriculum always says Sino curriculum. Um, there's German schools. There is a French school. I'm trying to think what else off the top of my head. There, of course, is a Kenyan curriculum, but the Kenyan curriculum is very close to British curriculum, unfortunately. So you can choose international schools. There are really good national schools as well. You can choose based on a national curriculum like that, like British curriculum and French curriculum and Canadian curriculum, American curriculum, whatever. And you can also choose based on what do they call it? Educational philosophy, right? So one educational philosophy might be Montessori, right? So you might want to choose Montessori because you're familiar with that educational philosophy. Another educational philosophy, my personal favorite, is International Baccalaureate, right? So you might choose International Baccalaureate instead of Montessori. Um, and there are others, right? So you can also choose, based on that. Let me see here. In Nairobi, there is, let's see, under the British curriculum, there's Hillcrest, there's Kenton College, Piponi School, Bradburn, um, and those are your A levels, right? So the American ones, there's the International School of Kenya, the ISK, and there's Roslyn Academy. Roslyn Academy is probably the more famous one. So if you've been looking at schools in Kenya, you've probably come across Roslyn Academy. Um, there is the German School of Nairobi. Um, there's the what's it called? Let's see, the French school. I think it's called Let's see. There's the French school in Nairobi as well. Here on the coast, a lot of our clients come here to the coast. We have Trade Winds. Trade Winds is U.S. curriculum, and then they also have a British curriculum add-on as well, right? So the Trade Wind people are they're U.S. Educators, and they go up to secondary school. So it's like ages 2 to 16, right? So they don't go the full way. There's South Coast Academy. It's a smaller private international school, and it's known to have a bit of a family atmosphere. So it's not Montessori; it's the other one which I can't even think of the name of right now. But there's like two philosophies that are kind of in opposition to each other. There's Montessori, which might be the more well known one, and then there's, I cannot think of it right now, but it'll probably jump in my head during the live. There's another one that has kind of the opposite point of view on how things are done. So Montessori is super analytic, super like independent. The kids can like choose how they want to do things, and they move from like station to station throughout the day. The other one is like super artistic, and the kids do what they want to do, and they flow to whatever station they want, and the blah 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 blah. Right? So it, the philosophies are in opposition to each other. There is what Rofine Field Junior School. It's a newer campus. It offers the Kenyan curriculum with international standards. All right, so, I'm liking that one. I'm actually looking at that one for my son possibly. And then we're also looking at building a school with a Pan African international curriculum because it doesn't exist, which is crazy. So we'll see which one happens first. There is a Brayburn Mombasa, and there is an Aga Khan Mombasa as well. Not Aga Khan the hospital, but Aga Khan the school, right? So those things do exist as well. A lot of folks, when their kids are old enough, like the Tradewinds Academy only goes up to age 16. So after 16, those kids will then commute to Mombasa, typically to go to an elite school if they qualify for such a thing, or they'll go international. So that's how the school looks like in the school landscape looks like in a nutshell, right? Any questions on that? All right. Healthcare. Healthcare becomes the next topic of concern for most clients. Looking over our 12 years of relocation, I'm giving it to you in the order that our clients give it to us in. So, healthcare is next. Um, Comprehensive, medical insurance, we believe in, right? That's always been a must for us. Um, we use Britam personally. I personally use Britam. All my employees get Britam as well, right? I had an issue where I went in and had to pay a dime for medical, right? I believe Britam stands for British American Insurance Company, right? And so that's what we use. There are other insurance companies. We have had a few clients that had, is it Allies? It's like it has a Z. It's like Alliance with a Z on the end. I can't remember the name of it, but apparently it's a U.S. insurance company. It also exists here. So we've had clients that just called up, and said, "Hey, I want to add Kenya, remove American coverage," and that was that. There's also, who else? There's a couple insurance companies that our clients sometimes already have, and then they don't have to do anything but call them and tell them they moved to Kenya. I'm trying to remember the other one. UMPC. UMPC is here. And Aetna. Aetna is also here. So those clients who have those three insurance companies, they can essentially just call up their insurance and be like, "Hey, I just moved, to this region. You exist here. Add that region. Remove the U.S." Some of them keep the U.S. depending on how much they go back and forth. Now, Traverse Culture is a different relocation company. They're absolutely legitimate, and they do medical tourism, right? So they have a different level of specialization in medical stuff. So definitely reach out to them. We don't own them, they're another company, but they're legitimate. Okay, they're legitimate. That's important. So you can reach out to them and ask them about medical tourism and things of that nature. They can also relocate you. They specialize more in people who are like moving into apartments and stuff like that, but they can also relocate you. All right. Any questions on healthcare?
Do you absolutely have to have insurance? I thought the food was better. You don't buy food with insurance. I'm not really sure what that means. You don't have to have insurance. No, you can pay cash. It's cheap enough that you could probably get away with just paying cash. Um, but you could get blindsided by like a big a big surgery, and not even a big surgery, just like being comfortable with the surgery, right? Like I just had a kidney stone removal. That's not really a big surgery, but I had like the laparoscopic version, so I don't have any scars anywhere. Nobody cut into me to get to my kidney to remove the stone or anything like that. Um, so and it was like a laser procedure, right? So like I had like a high level, the same type of procedure I would have like in the United States, essentially, right? And they recorded the procedure and all that. I have like a video of them blasting my kidney stone away like it's Star Trek, right? So could I have done a lower level procedure and had some giant scar, on my chest somewhere where they cut open my kidney and, dug out the stone or whatever? I suppose I could have. So there's a range to what you're getting done. And then what does that procedure cost cash if you don't have, insurance? So that procedure, it was like a half a million local currency. So, it was a few $1,000s, and insurance paid all of it. Like there wasn't even a copay. I've actually not even heard of a copay since I've been here, right? So we pay our insurance. Um, we pay annually. I pay for my entire family on one plan, and they pay for everything, right? Everything that we go into. Also, my employees have the same level of coverage that I have, right? So they also don't have an issue. So, you know, how does the copay system slash process work? Right, right, yeah, right. No copay. Now, I don't think I could pay more. So let's just be clear about that. And I do the same thing for my employees. They don't have like the lowest plan; they have the highest plan, right? So, is there some kind of like base level plan that doesn't cover anything or like blah 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 blah? Probably. One thing you don't want to do is come over here with like the poor mindset. You don't want to come over here being a price buyer on everything. You don't want to come over here looking for the cheapest thing, right? Because you don't understand how the system works yet, right? So you want to be a value buyer. Doesn't mean that you want to expend the most amount of money. You don't want to, it's not some weird thing where you're paying Gucci prices because the name Gucci is on the thing. Like, no, that's stupid. That's not what I'm talking about. But will you want to make sure that that you're a value buyer, that you're buying value, right? That you're not a price buyer and you're like, oh, what's the cheapest? Okay, I'll take the cheapest. That's exactly what you're going to get then, right? So you want to make sure that you're a value buyer and that you're always buying value until you get lay of the land. And if you want to be frugal or something, and that's what floats your boat, so be it. But you got to understand how things work. For example, car insurance never covers the driver. It's just the way it works here. Car insurance covers everyone in your car and the person you hit. It never covers you, right? So if it's not your fault, then the person who hit you, what did I say it covers? All the passengers and the person you hit, right? So if it's not your fault, their insurance covers. Okay, everybody in your car is covered by your insurance and essentially their insurance because they hit you, right? If it's not your fault. If it is your fault, everyone in your car is covered, but you are not. So how do you make sure you're covered? That is actually a rider on your health insurance, right? So your personal injury coverage, that is an additional, rider. Your personal injury coverage covers all injuries, including auto injuries. It's not like the U.S. where like, oh, you were in a car, call your auto insurance. No, it's personal injury. You were personally injured while you were in a car. It doesn't matter that you have auto insurance. You're covered. So that's how you cover yourself in a car. Don't cover yourself with your auto insurance, right? So it's things like that where you can't be like, oh, just get the cheapest auto insurance. Let me get the cheapest medical insurance and not realize your medical insurance actually covers your medical injuries in a car accident, not your auto insurance, right? So that's why it's you gotta approach things with a value-based mindset, not a price-based mindset, right? And that's also why you need the professional concierge there walking you through everything because you wouldn't assume that. Coming from the West, you would not assume that if you got in an auto accident, everybody in the car is covered but you, right? You would assume that you're covered under the auto insurance, but you're not. You're covered under your health insurance. So like the guy, what was his name? Jason, when Jason asked about do you have to have insurance, you don't have to have insurance, but if you drive and you don't have medical insurance, even though you have auto insurance, you're not covered, right? So these are the kinds of things that your professional will guide you through. These are also the kinds of things that fake relocation services don't know. They just take your money and try to buy try to buy a visa or something and then drop you off and you're on your own and that's the end of it, right? So you want to make sure you're dealing with somebody solid who's all these ins and outs and who can make sure that you're taken care of when you get in country. Thank you very much, Diaspora Safe Space. Good to see you. I saw you on a live, chopping it up, defending the African diaspora. The voice of reason on the live, actually. All right. The next thing that our folks are most interested in, what did we cover? We covered healthcare. Actually, any questions on healthcare? Let me give it a minute. Take a breath. Let you guys ask a question. Always. Any questions on healthcare? Any questions at all? Yes, the auto insurance does not cover the driver. I know that threw me for a loop as well. I'm used to the auto insurance covering the driver. You can get auto replacement though. Like I have auto replacement on all my cars. So if my car is totaled, they immediately buy me a new one. You what you typically won't get is gap coverage, right? In the United States, and if you're not from the US, you might not even know what gap coverage is. But in the United States, we have this thing called gap coverage. And it's because everybody finances their car. Everybody uses credit in the United States. Here, we don't really use credit like that. So everybody typically owns their car, right? So in the U.S., you see somebody driving a G-Wagon, maybe they're paying $1,200 a month, $2,500 a month for the G-Wagon. Here, somebody driving a G-Wagon, they bought it cash, right? It's a whole different ball game. So there is no gap insurance because you don't have, an auto loan, right? But you can get vehicle replacement added onto your insurance. So if anything goes wrong, you crash the car, it's totaled or whatever, they buy you the exact same vehicle or at least the same class of vehicle, and you have the coverage like on that price. So that's in your coverage, you know what I mean? So if the dealer is like, okay, we have this new model, it's the same price as the thing that you did, it's the money that you're covered on. So you can go ahead and get the new model as long as it's the same price or top up, right? And, go across that. So you can go ahead and do that if you want. But that's a rider, you know what I mean? So it's not like automatically they just replace your car if the car is total. It depends on fault. Same as the United States, right? If it's your fault and you totaled the car, you don't get a replacement, right? If it's not your fault, somebody else totals your car, then it's getting replaced anyway, right? So same type of thing. All right, let's see here. There's full coverage. I'm not sure what that means. Depends on the write-offs. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. All right. Anything else on insurance, auto insurance, health insurance? Any questions on that? All right, so we move on to the next most important aspect of the relocation, at least with our clients in the past, and that is money in banking. Okay, if if you are illegally immigrating into a place, which unfortunately there were a shit ton of fake relocation companies that were offering that as a solution, illegal immigration as a solution. Right? So what they would tell people is, oh, you can just move here and you get a visa, and every 90 days you cross the border and cross back, right? Which is illegal immigration. Okay, so you have no access to any social services if that's what you're doing, right? It's illegal, right? So don't do that. Um, Now, once you have your actual immigrant permit and you have, whatever permit you're actually legally immigrating with, then we can start working with banks and, and doing whatever we need to do to get your access to wherever you're coming from, whether it's US, whether it's Canada, like whatever, over here as well, right? So there's that. Now, beyond that, there are a couple like apps that will tie into like the digital money ecosystem and infrastructure over here, right? So you can have Sendwave, which is essentially Zelle but for Africa, right? And I mean Africa. It's not just Kenya. So there's a bunch of different African countries on there. It ain't all 54 of them, but there's a bunch of different African countries in the app. Sendwave works just like Zelle. There is no international Zelle. Zelle only works in the United States, right? But Sendwave works exactly like Zelle. You put your debit card in the app, right? If you have Zelle in your bank, then you haven't been putting your debit card in the app. But if you download the Zelle app, you got to put your debit card in the app, and then it immediately, does a withdrawal from your bank account via your debit card, so it debits your account and immediately sends that money to whoever you Zelle the money to, right? Same thing with Sendwave, right? You can immediately debit your account, and then it will immediately send that money to the M-Pesa account of whoever it is that you're sending money to, or if it's not Kenya, because like I said, there's a bunch of different countries on there, then whatever digital platform they have. Most people are licensing M-Pesa in some way, shape, or form. So most of the digital money platforms on the continent are actually M-Pesa. But even if it's not M-Pesa, if it's on that list, you can get money to them. Might be a little bit slower if it's not an M-Pesa situation, right? So there's that. From there are certain banks that we have relationships with that give us better deals and better rates on things. That's just a matter of dealing with them for over 12 years. So some of our clients can engage in that way. But once we have your paperwork done, you can just walk into any bank and open an account, no problem, right? Before your paperwork is done, you walk into a bank and they typically ask for a work permit. Even though most of us do not get work permits, that's not the way we come to Kenya. That's typically just the terminology they use. So if they ask for a work permit, but you have an investor permit, it's the same thing as far as authority to open a bank account, right? If you have a residency permit, same thing. Ordinary residency permit, definitely a permanent residence, permit, same thing. You could have an NGO permit, same thing, right? Mining permit, same thing, right? Dependent pass, same thing. Student pass, same thing, right? They're just going to use the terminology work permit at most banks. So that's just the way that works, right? All right. Any questions on that? Can you use Wise? Yes, you can use Wise. I have World Remit. That's fine. You can use World Remit. What is this? We have comprehensive insurance in Kenya. Yeah, you do. I was talking about two specific types of insurance. There's medical insurance, there's auto insurance, there's business insurance, but yes, there's comprehensive insurance In Kenya, unfortunately, for people who are not in Kenya, that doesn't tell them anything, right? So that's why we're breaking down the individual insurances, not just saying we have comprehensive insurance. That doesn't mean anything to someone who's not in the country. Yeah, I mean, you can Western Union and you can do those things. They're just not fast. And like, why? When you can be fast. Like, SendWave is instantaneous. Like, you send it, they get it instantaneously, right? And it's typically the first thing that we set up. So for our clients, they'll set up SendWave before they ever get here. Like, we can send them a link and they can, click the link and boom, download the app. And we have them set it up before they get here because sometimes there's verification depending on which country you set it up in. So you want to do your verification at home. You don't want to wait till you get here to set it up, right? So you set it up, verification's done. They even call you and stuff. They have you hold your ID and do a selfie and all that stuff. Like, whatever. You verify that you are the real person and it is your bank card and whatever. And then you get the verification out of the way. When you get here, then you get a local SIM card, like a Safaricom SIM card, right? And so that local SIM card will have an M-Pesa account on it. The M-Pesa account is that kind of digital wallet. Once you get that phone number, you can go right back to the SendWave app, even from here, because you've already, verified and all of that stuff. And you can just add your phone number and then you add your name. It checks the name. So if you don't know the name, if all you have is a phone number, you cannot send money to somebody using SendWave. You have to write their name in the app the exact same way it's written on their cell account, right? So you write your name in there, and then it typically pops up and either says, like, are you sending it to yourself? In which case, there's no additional kind of like verification type stuff, right? Or if you're sending it to someone else, it might do the same thing Zelle does. Like, are you sure you want to send to this person? Do you know this person? Do you blah, 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 right? So one of those things. So it's very, very, very similar to Zelle, but it's instantaneous and there's no fees. The fees are essentially embedded in the rates, right? So the rate that they give you for the transfer might be, 10 cents less than the government rate, and they're making the 10 cents difference or whatever, right? So they're doing forex, right? So there's no additional fees like you would get in Western Union or something like that. So could you do Western Union? Yeah, you could if you want, but super old school, and you're gonna end up paying a lot more. Any other questions about that? Said it's licensed all over Africa. Does that include the West? If you mean West Africa, yes. They call it mobile money in like Ghana, and M-Pesa literally means mobile money in Swahili. So Kenya invented the technology, and it's licensed in the West as well. Yes. Any other questions as it relates to banking or insurance? Moving on. The next thing that typically interests our clients is connectivity and utilities, right? Internet, always here, especially for you guys, I guess, who have your remote jobs and all that. Always, always, always. Internet, internet, internet. How's the internet? Internet, internet, internet. Right? So internet is pretty decent. We have fiber optic. I'm talking to you on internet right now. If you're watching me on TikTok, or if you're watching me on Facebook, you're watching me on that. They're on the same Wi-Fi connection, and I'm outside of the house. The Wi-Fi is on the inside of the house, and my Wi-Fi router is slower because I run it through a VPN, right? So going through the VPN makes it slower. So fiber optic speed is standard in here in Diani at the beach. Fiber optic is standard. It's also standard in Nairobi. You can get up to 150 MEPS, 50 to 150 MIPS is standard. You can get more. Starlink is also here. I personally don't do any business with Musk companies, but Starlink is here, so you can use Starlink if you'd like. There's also 5G, like MiFi type of setups, and apparently they work just fine. We have a client that we relocated a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And I was just at his house the other day, Christmas. We did a Christmas party for all the employees and all of that at a construction site, which is right next to his house. So there's like we're constructing a house right next to his. And so we stopped by and said hi and checked in on him. And he was like playing Xbox Live on the mobile 5G home internet, right? So it's a router just like you would have any other router, but it uses the cellular service. And he was like, so I was impressed by that. I didn't realize it was that fast. So yeah, there's all different types of internet. So your internet's fine. You can remote work from here, all of that. Power. People like to talk about like power outages and stuff like that. They do happen. They're typically scheduled, right? So if you go to Kenya Power right now, you go to their Twitter or you go to their Facebook or maybe their Instagram. I don't really mess with Instagram like that. But go to their social media. There'll be a list of places where they're doing maintenance. It's not like load sharing in South Africa where the power just randomly goes off. Typically it's something that's scheduled. Do trucks hit telephone poles? Same way they do in America. Yes. Will that knock out the power? Yes. Right. So those random situations happen. But for the most part, they have a maintenance schedule, and when they do maintenance, they shut off the power to that area and they do the maintenance, right? And then the power comes back on, and you essentially know it's coming. Our clients typically don't notice because they either are fully off grid and they've paid for a solar off grid upgrade, or they have a diesel generator that's automatic, right? So they typically have one or the other. We haven't built a house where they haven't opted for one of those two in maybe, I don't know, maybe a decade, right? So everyone that we've constructed houses for has either a diesel backup generator, which is the most cost effective, or they have a full off-grid system where they don't have to depend on the power grid at all. And so they don't even know like when the power is out, right? So we were live the one time and somebody, was saying, and we mentioned something about like the Wi-Fi, and they're like, what do you mean Wi-Fi? The power's out, and we didn't even know because, we have the backups in place, right? So our clients typically don't know when the power goes out. However, the outlets are Type G outlets. Type G outlets are the same type of outlets that you would see in the UK. Now, we always install universal Type G, right? So anything can plug into it, even though it's a Type G outlet, right? So your standard Type G outlet is like 2 slits and then 1 slit in the middle, right? And you have these 2 kind of flat bars and then another flat bar going the other way, and it's like a 240 volt outlet. In America, we have 120. Right, so certain things now, that Xbox that the guy was playing that I just talked about is an American Xbox, but typically when you have something that has like a big box on the cord where you plug one piece of the cord into the box and you plug the other piece of the cord into the wall, typically that box is designed to protect whatever it is you're powering in different voltages around the world, right? So Xboxes can just plug in, they're typically fine. Laptops typically have that functionality as well. You can just plug them in anywhere and they're okay, right? But not everything is like that. It's like we had somebody like plug in a cappuccino machine and it blew up, right? Flames coming out the back, right? Your air fryers and stuff like that, that's not going to work. They're going to blow up, right? So especially those things that are intensive in electricity and then they use electricity to like produce heat, those things, they need to be right. So there's a couple things that happen there. Like we personally, as a family, there are certain like Ninja Shark products that we like, right? And so we end up having to order them in through Amazon UK because they're not available in the local market. Right. There are air fryers available in the local market, just not that specific one that we wanted to purchase or whatever the case is. Right. So if there's specific, you know, any kind of like little appliances that you want that are specific, you want a Nescafe, whatever, or you want a Keurig or something like that, something that's not like here in the local market, then you need to bring it in from the UK market to make sure the plug works, right, and the voltage works. So there's that. What else? On connectivity and utilities. For utilities overall, for most of our clients, they're purchasing a house. We're building the house for them, right? And so for most of our clients, they have a biodigester, so they don't have to deal with septic. They don't have a sewage bill. They have a borehole, so they don't have a water bill. They can upgrade, like I said, to that full solar backup, so they don't have an electric bill. You don't want to run like your diesel generator backup, instead of electric, because that you might end up spending more money on diesel. But if they have the diesel backup, then that's just for when power goes down or whatever, that the diesel backup kicks in. So really, the only utilities that most of our clients have to pay is electric, Kenya Power, and their internet, right? And then like I don't consider Netflix a utility, right? So whatever with that. But internet and electric, and that's it. They don't have sewage, they don't have water. A lot of times they don't have property tax because they have agricultural land. So if they have agricultural land, there's no property tax, right? For now, they're trying to change that. Hasn't been changed yet. We'll see if it changes. But for now, if they have agricultural land, there's no property tax. So essentially, again, we're a diaspora freedom initiative. That's why we don't sit up here and talk about, oh, get an apartment, pay that apartment for the rest of your life. No, we want you to be free, right? We don't want you paying anything, right? We don't even want you to have to work. That's why we're running the special that we're running now, where you get the bonds, and the bonds give you passive income, and you have passive income coming in every month without doing any work at all, without doing anything, right? So we focus on that freedom. That's what we're about, right? So when we build a house, we build it to those specs, and then we hope that you're able to have as much freedom as possible and enjoy the rest of your life, and go forward from there. So any questions on utilities or connectivity? Which companies? Which companies? What? Y'all are really with the like 2-word answers today. Like you're, it's not just in fan base, even in TikTok. I'm getting the weird answers that I can't decipher what it is exactly you're talking about. Which companies? What's which companies? Which companies provide internet connectivity? Okay. Safaricom. You can get Safaricom internet. You can get Safaricom fiber, which is that fiber optic. You can also get Safaricom 5G in the home and 4G in the home. The guy who was playing the Xbox had 4G. He didn't even have 5G. So, all right. There's also a company called Fiba, but I think it's like they spell it a little different. It's like an A instead of a ER or whatever. But Fiba, they obviously specialize in fiber optic. So they exist. There's a company called Zuku. There's a company called Dimension Data, right? So there's a bunch of different, ISP, internet service providers, And then, yes, of course, there's Starlink. Okay. Any other questions? Please ask me the question in a way that I can know what you're talking about. Can you elaborate on agricultural land? Because I thought foreigners can't own that. No, that's just another scam thing. That people say that who want to like force you to buy what they want you to buy. Foreigners can have every single type of land. There's absolutely no restriction on which type of land a foreigner can have. There's a restriction on the interest in the land, right? So you can have, they call it user. you can have absolutely any user of land, right? So what we call user is zone. You can have any zoning of land that exists, right? Typically, the restriction on a foreigner is when you get that land, your interest in the land will be a leasehold interest. A leasehold interest is not a lease. That's another scam that they catch people with who try to do this on their own, right? So they Google it and they're like, oh, foreigners can only have a leasehold. There's no such thing as leasehold in the United States. So what do they say? Leasehold must be a lease. It's not a lease. It's just called leasehold. It's not a lease at all. You own the property absolutely the same as a freehold. Just your interest is for 90 years, and there's an automatic renewal, right? So as long as you file your paperwork on time, you get that renewal. There are people who have come here and gotten leaseholds and lost the leaseholds just mere years after they purchased it, because again, doing it on their own, they heard automatic renewal and just assumed that it just happened on its own. No, not only do you need to file the paperwork, you need to file it on time. And when you buy it, does not start the 99 years. The 99 years starts when the title deed was created, right? So again, that's one of the ways to figure out whether you're being conned or not, right? If somebody is offering you a property that already exists, and they're like, oh, yeah. So you'll get it for 99 years. Here, sign this lease with me. They're literally trying to charge you full price for a lease. And because you don't know no better, and because you're doing it on your own, thinking you're saving money by not hiring a professional, you sign a dumbass lease because you chat GPT'd it and it told you leasehold, right? I need y'all to stop doing that. Because our law firm is the one that gets the calls when you finally find out that you've been duped and you try to sue them, and you signed a whole agreement allowing them to do it, and there's no lawsuit available for you. You're just screwed, right? And they can go to the bank and take a loan out against your property because it ain't yours. You signed a lease. They can sell it to somebody else, and that person can decide, oh, well, you signed this thing, you paid this price, it's supposed to be 99 years, here's your money back, get out. I now own the property. And you're just a leaser. It's like a renter. Here's the money back on that lease. Get out. Right? It's not the same as the United States. Right? You're not going to get 6 months living rent free in there because the judge said so. You're going to be out by the weekend. Right? Now where you're going to go? Now what you're going to do? You don't know anyone in the country. Right? Y'all got to stop that. Right? We see that happen on a weekly basis at least. You have to stop that. You're killing yourself. Don't set yourself up for failure. Please. Ain't no way I'd move to a new country on my own. Definitely hire somebody to guide you. I know that's right. So many people do it and they end up with nothing. And it's sad. They end up with nothing. They end up back in their country in a worse situation than when they started. Please. And I'm passionate about it because we just ran into this with a pregnant woman, and it broke my heart because by the time she got to us, she had nothing, and she was scammed by another American. She was scammed by an American that had a fake relocation company. They got her over here, didn't even get her a permit. All they did was they took thousands of dollars from her and got her a visa. Got her over here and dropped her off on the coast. Pregnant, and 2 other little kids with her, right? Took all her money, did all of that stuff, and just dropped her here on the coast. And, she's calling the law firm trying to get things done, and we're like, nothing happens quickly. You know what I mean? And so she's back in Texas now, and as far as I know, homeless. Like, come on, and please, just stop doing that. Please stop doing that. Companies should do this for international new hires as well. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. We used to work through agents. And so like an agent could be like an international like real estate agent or whatever, and they would come to us to build an Airbnb for their client, right? And so we build the Airbnb, but then the agent who was not on the ground would turn around and like try to go hire the property manager so that they could like make some money off of the situation, right? So like they could be charging a fee from wherever they were, to manage this whatever program that they were trying to manage, right? And so the problem is the agent they hired would be garbage. The agent they hired would start stealing from the property owner. They would start booking out the property on their own and telling the property owner, "Oh, you have no occupancy right now," right? And they're pocketing all the money, right? Because they're not here, they're not on the ground. So we just cut the agent thing off because they're not thinking clearly, And so we don't do the agents at all anymore. But yeah, that used to happen a lot. I've seen new hires move to a new country for a job and get scammed, and the company paid a lot. Absolutely, absolutely. Don't do nothing with that. When you have a real team that moves you over, there should be a lead team attached to that team, and you should be able to ask questions, the entire time you're there. Was interested in the property. Have your law firm. Yes, yes, yes. Have your law firm approve the paperwork. Yes. Absolutely. Sorry, talk to Dick. No problem, man. No problem. If someone was interested in a property, can they use? Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our law firm will do due diligence, and they'll represent you in, in the it's called land conveyance here. We don't call it that in the U.S. But real estate conveyancing. But they'll represent you in the transaction, right? Which is helpful. We've stepped up to represent people, and the seller disappeared. Like as soon as our law firm get involved, all of a sudden the person who was selling the land doesn't even exist anymore. Phone number turned off. you do a background search on the ID that they gave, it's a fake ID, and the land was fake too, right? And as soon as the law firm gets involved, they're gone, right? And so, yeah, you always, not only do you want a firm representing you, you want a firm representing them, right? We're doing this right now. Why do you want a firm representing them? Because if a firm represents them, you can hold the firm accountable, not just the seller, right? So if the seller is a fraud, they can typically disappear, just like what I just described. Their phone number goes dead, their ID was fake, sometimes they're not even Kenyan. Most of the time, actually, they're not even Kenyan, right? So you'll get these people that be on YouTube, "Oh, the Kenyans, they scammed me, da, 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 da." If you were to look into it with an actual law firm and an actual private investigator, you'll find out those people are Ugandan, Tanzanian, some of them are Rwandan, a lot of them are Somali. Like, they're not actually Kenyan. They just happen to be in Kenya, right? And they're paying for fake IDs, and they got all this fake setup, and they're professional scammers, right? And so you can't find them, right? And so what ends up happening is you look at a property contract, and it'll say drawn by such and such an advocate's law firm, and you can look up that law firm, and it's real, and the advocates are real, and you look them up in the bar association, which is called LSK in Kenya, and all of it's real. But drawn by does not mean represented. When you look in the definitions of the contract, the parties, there's no representation in the parties. So when you go back to that law firm after you get scammed, the law firm says, "Hold on, somebody came up here and asked us to draw up a contract." And that's what we did. We drew up a contract. We're not party to the deal. We don't represent the seller, nor do we represent the buyer, right? So now you're screwed. But if they do represent the seller, you can sue them if the seller disappears, and they're stuck with it, right? So that's why you make sure that the seller is represented by a legitimate law firm as well, because that law firm now is going to do due diligence because they don't want to get sued. So before they take that seller on as a client, they're also going to do due diligence, right? So, but it's things that, how would you know that, right? So it's things, that's why you need professionals to be in there. And there's a ton more things. There's a ton more caveats in real estate law that don't exist anywhere else I've ever been, right? And I've done real estate deals in Hong Kong. I've done real estate deals in Canada. I've done real estate deals in the UK. I've done real estate deals in Sierra Leone. There are a bunch of caveats in real estate deals here that are not in, you would not know unless you were local. And even some locals don't know. So, unless you have a real estate lawyer, you wouldn't know a lot of these things. All right. Any other questions there? Let's see. Any other questions on housing? Real estate real estate conveyance, but yeah, any zone, you can get any zone, that's not a problem. It's just that your interest in the property is always leasehold, regardless to what your title deed says. If you know, you know, but regardless of what your title deed says, your interest in the property is leasehold. Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on then. Transportation. All right, transportation. You can drive. Um, a lot of our clients will upgrade to a vehicle included in their relocation package. Our investor clients typically don't, unless they want like airport pickup, right? So like if they're doing an Airbnb and they want to focus on like corporate Airbnbs and stuff like that, then they may invest in some sort of like van type of thing. Typically, the one that we normally get is called a Noah. So it's a really, really cost effective, like 7-seater, I think. Seven, three, one, two, six, seven. Yeah. So it's actually, I guess it's actually 8, but it's 7 passengers, right? So Noah is super cost effective if you're, if it's for your business, it kind of makes sense. And then they do like airport pickups and stuff like that. So those folks can upgrade to that, but most of our folks upgrade to an SUV so it can handle any terrain. Some roads are really rough; they're not paved at all, and like whatever. Other roads are what you know from wherever you're from, right? And so for us, again, Freedom Initiative, we want to make sure there's no problems with the vehicle. So what we try to do is make sure that we have vehicles with really good warranties on them, bumper to bumper warranties. The best one that we have available right now is 7 years, 200,000 kilometers, which is like 125,000 miles. So 7 years and 125,000 mile warranty. That's the best one that we have available right now through our partnerships. So that's what we try to do. In the cities, you have Uber. Uber does exist. You also have Bolt. I think there was a company called Little Cab. I don't know if that still exists. Um, and then there was like another one that I don't know if it still exists either. There were like a couple really tiny ones that I don't know if they got traction or not. But yep, so you have those. There are tuk-tuks for smaller, shorter trips, and bodas, which are essentially motorcycle taxis. Again, for smaller trips, for sure. um, um, so you have that. Flights, your local stuff is Jumbo Jet and Safari Link. And I am forgetting one. Jumbo Jet, Safari Link, and hmm, it is not coming to me at all. But there is a third one. There's a third like local one, and then of course you have Kenya Airways, and then all the big airlines as well to be moving around regionally. Um, Climate and lifestyle. Nairobi, you kind of have like an eternal springtime in Nairobi because of the elevation, right? Typically, people say you don't need AC in Nairobi, like a fan is good enough. You have warm days and cool nights. So you'll see, like at nighttime, you'll see people wearing coats and all of that. It's because of the elevation. We're all here at the equator, but the elevation is what's going to control the climate that you're actually dealing with, right? Diani, tropical, humid, super hot. You need an AC, all of that, right? I love it here. So you have, those different extremes going on. You can go up to the top of Mount Kenya, have a snowball flight, come back down the Mount Kenya, and go to Diani and go swimming with the dolphins, right? So you can have whatever climate you want. Um, Kind of like within the same state. So if you're looking at it from like a U.S. point of view, and you're in a state that's sizable, like Texas or Pennsylvania or California, it's like having all those different climates in the same state. All right. Any questions on that? That is in order the concerns that our clients typically have, initially anyway. Any questions on that? What if somebody wanted mountain fuels except for all the beach? What if somebody wanted mountain fuels? What's a mountain fuel? I'm not sure what that is. Is it like diesel, like turning wood into diesel? Oh, geez, mountain views. Wow. Talk to Texas, messing you up today, brother. All right, mountain views. So yeah, I mean, no, you're good. You're good. It happens to me sometimes too. um, so yes, all right, mountain views, but what was it? But beach what? Mountain views except for except for all the beach. I don't. What? Rewrite the second part for me. Mountain views, I got. What about the beach? You don't want to see the beach, but not beach living. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. That's super easy. The difficulty in that becomes proximity to like the things that you want that you're not necessarily thinking about just yet, right? So like modern hospital, right? Proximity to a modern hospital in case of emergency. Proximity to a law enforcement agency that understands how to deal with foreigners. That's a specialized agency here in Kenya, right? So in Kenya there are tourist police, but they're not everywhere because not everywhere is a tourist area, right? Tourist police have special training, right? So they talk to you knowing you're a foreigner, knowing that you don't really know the rules and all of that stuff, and it's an easier interaction because they've been trained to like, okay, you don't really understand what's going on here. Let me explain to you how it works, and then we go from there, right? So that's nice to have. So it just depends. Like here, there are some of our clients that come to this area do want that, and they get it, right? So they'll be up in like Shimba Hills. So Shimba Hills will be kind of like a mountain type of region, and in Shimba Hills they can actually see the ocean, but they're like up on the mountain, right? So they're like a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes from the beach, but because of the elevation, they don't have the same temperature, right? So it's actually cooler in Shimba Hills than it is like in Diani, but it's only like 45 minutes away, right? So there's places like that where you can kind of get the best of both worlds, or you can just like go into the mountains. You can go like we built a house for somebody in a place called Kisii. Kisii is like mountainous. It's like in the Rift Valley, up there, and so it's like mountainous. It's nowhere near the beach, right? And so that's just where they live. That's where they chose to live, right? Now there's some decent like hospitals there, but if they need brain surgery, they're gonna have to fly. You know what I mean? But they chose that. Like they knew, we let them know, you know what I mean? And all of that. So it becomes one of those things. Like you can go all the way out in the bush, you know, especially for price buyers, they typically set themselves up for failure with that. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I found an acre of land for $1,500. Okay, I know where that's at." And then they'll go out there. They ain't got no roads. They got no water. They got virtually no neighbors, or the neighbors they do have are like, why are you here? This is our tribal land. We don't care if somebody sold it to you. So they don't have friendly neighbors. And they're nowhere near a hospital. They don't have any good cellular reception. There are no supermarket. Like, yeah, you can go do that if you wanna, but that's a setup for failure. So we wouldn't ever put anybody in that position. So it's that you got to balance, your access to the things that you take for granted versus, the landscape and the pricing. Can you drink straight from the tap? And can is water safe for drinking? Yeah, it depends on where you are, right? And it doesn't depend on where you are from a cleanliness level. It depends on where you are from an aquifer level, right? So if you're in Nairobi, for example, you can. Here at the beach, the aquifer is like the ocean is right there, right? I can hear it like it's an acre away. So it's like one football field in that direction is the ocean, right? So my aquifer, the salt water invades the aquifer. It's not straight up salt water, right? So animals drink it, no problems. You can drink it too. You'll taste the salt, right? But, and obviously your salt intake can be a problem, whatever. You can drink it, but we typically don't because this is so cheap. Like we order, your water cooler, we have the 5 gallon jugs, right? We get, I think it's 20 of those delivered. I want to say it's like every 2 weeks, and it's like $10, right? So there's just no reason. Now, for some of our builds, you can install a reverse osmosis at the borehole. So the water will come out of the borehole salty, or at least saltier than sweet water, go through the reverse osmosis before entering the house and come into your tap completely sweet, right? So you can do that as well. It just depends on what you want to do with the water. But it's so cheap to buy water, it doesn't necessarily make sense to do anything other than the reverse osmosis. Like that does make sense, especially if you got like kids in the house or whatever, like that'll pay itself back eventually. But outside of that, you just have the water delivered and it doesn't, like it's part of my budget and I don't even notice it. It's just one of those things that's just so cheap that it doesn't matter. But that's not everywhere. That's here because there's salt water. So does the water dry your skin? No. Think about if you have a water softener in the United States, what do you have to put in the water softener to make it work? Those big bags of salt, those salt pellets. So all of the water here is soft water. So no, it has the opposite effect on your skin. Now, if you're up in Kisii where you don't have the salt water thing, then you might have hard water. Then you might actually need to add salt. You might need the water softener, you know what I mean? But down here at the beach, nah, you're good to go. Yeah, actually, yeah, definitely. Now, what I don't like though is that local builders, they don't ground houses properly. So if you know anything um, about construction and the electrical side of construction, if your house isn't grounded, a process takes place across your pipes called electrolysis, all your metal pipes. And the electrolysis kind of eats away at the metal pipes, right? So you end up in a situation where all your stuff is rusting and you can't figure out why, and it's because they didn't ground your house properly, right? And so the wires are running through the concrete, in the house, and the house is not grounded. So there's electricity, not like you can touch the wall and it shocks you or anything, but there's electricity running through your house that's not grounded, and that electricity will eat away at anything metal. So that becomes a problem, right? And so it's something that people will come back to us on. Like some people are like, oh no, I don't want to build a house. I'm gonna just buy one. Oh, okay. And then they come back to us and they're like, why am I replacing my faucet every 3 months? Why is my faucet rusting and it's stainless steel? every 3 months. Why, and they kind of sometimes come back like they got an attitude with us. We're like, wait a minute, you chose to go buy a house. We would have built you a house that wouldn't do that. But that's not what you did. You went and bought a house, from a local because you thought it was cheaper. Now your maintenance is sky high because the house isn't grounded. And so everything in the house, all your hinges are rusting off. Everything's rusting within 6 months. So you got to replace every fixture in your house every 6 months. That was your decision. You know what I mean? And we definitely told you about it. But with us, we try not to be like pushy. So when someone's like, no, I didn't say this, blah, 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 we tell them why and we leave it alone. Like we're not pushy salesmen. We're like, no, you need to come work with us. You need to. Nope. This is what'll happen if you do it your way. Now go make your decision. And so that's what people run into when they use local builders, unfortunately, because there isn't a culture of maintenance. There's a culture of repair, right? So people build things to repair them. They don't build things to maintain them, right? And so it just depends on who you're going to have building your stuff. Like even us, we will do like PVC instead of aluminum a lot of times, just to make sure that the windows don't get to rusting, right? So like, as a matter of fact, there are 4 live streams here, so I'm gonna do you guys one at a time. Just bear with me here. All right. So this is TikTok. Let me. There are rust spots showing up on this mosquito net. See how the nail, this is a stainless steel nail. See how the nail is rusting already? Right? So, oops. Sorry about that. Swipe left to close. I don't know if you can see me, but I can't see you anymore. There we go. All right. So, those are the kinds of issues. And so this place we didn't build. This is like a holding place that we use that was already kind of there for clients that come and they don't want to wait till their place is built to arrive. So we had a contract with them. The contract's going to be up soon because we have our own place now. But all right, so what is this? This is what? What is this? This is YouTube. All right, YouTube. So I'm going to show you the same thing. So actually, let me flip the camera for you to see this. All right, see these spots on the mosquito net? That's rust. Let me get you closer so you can see it. That's rust on the mosquito net. See the stainless steel nail? See? These are galvanized nails. Look, these are galvanized stainless steel nails turning into rust. Right? Here's a new one so you can see what it's supposed to look like. All right? And already this one is rusting. Right? So that's what happens in your kind of local architecture situation, right? Okay. And what is that? Facebook? All right. Hold on, guys. You guys got me moving all these different devices around. Let me get Facebook to see what's going on here. Bear with me, TikTok. Let me put you over here. All right, Facebook. You're the big boy. I'm going to turn your camera around as well. All right. See here? See the rust on the screen? Let me show you the nails. See how the galvanized nails are rusting? See? That's a new one. See how it's not rusted? But in a couple of months it will be, okay? So that's what happens when you don't ground your property and electrolysis sets in. Sorry about that. Facebook. All right, so that's what happens, okay? All right, everybody has seen, fan base. Fan base, you guys haven't seen it. All right. So, see the rest? All right. See the rusty nails here? These are galvanized stainless steel, right? So they're 304 stainless steel. See, there's a new one. See that? So some of you guys were with us in There's everybody else. All right. Some of you guys were with us in China, and some of you guys were asking on those live streams from China, why do I keep telling my partners over there 304 stainless steel isn't good enough, that I need 316 stainless steel? Now you see, right? So now you get to see when you're dealing with somebody who's not us in building, the house, and they're not grounding the house the way an American engineer would, and they're not making sure that there's not electrolysis eating away at the house, then that's the kind of product that you get, right? But even with us grounding the house, the sinks, the faucets would still sometimes go through a bit of electrolysis. And so that's why we're telling them that, look, we might as well just spend the extra money and get the 316 if we can and deal with that versus, the 304. What's the difference? Well, I suppose it's an alloy difference, but to make things really, really simple, 316 stainless steel is called marine grade stainless steel. It's the type of stainless steel that you put on a yacht, right? So if you're in the middle of the ocean with the highest salt water content and the highest, how do you ground, your yacht? Yes, there are ways to do it, but it's not like an earth ground, right? And so that stainless steel is designed to resist the highest level of corrosion, which is also why it's expensive, right? So that's why rather than even deal with something like that on like a window base, we'll just do a PVC window, and then obviously we're not worried about any corrosion other than maybe the hinges on opening the window or something like that. And then those things are typically protected with like a coating of oil as well as being galvanized, so they last a little bit longer. Right. So that's part of having your professional team, right? If your team is not professional, they don't know that. There's a lot of places that look real pretty. There's a lot of real estate agents that'll, oh, you don't need to build a house. Look at this pretty house over here. You'll be replacing everything in that house every 4 months. Yeah, no, it's not only near the coast. No, because the grounding, it's accelerated at the coast because of the salt water. But typically nothing is grounded. Now the Chinese sometimes will do some grounding, um, but sometimes they won't because they use, it's like a PVC piping for everything. Like they do things the Chinese way. So they have like a PVC piping for everything. So they just figure that it's like insulated and it's not gonna, get out. So even sometimes they don't do it. But yeah, it's not only the coast, and it's not only Africa. Like in America, if you don't ground your house, this happens. So it's not only an African thing either. But it's just a matter of like who you have, building your place. There are certain places where there's less though, like Kisumu. Like if we build in Kisumu, there's very little rust up there. There is some, but there's very little. So it's a difference in like they have a lake, but I don't think their lake is salt. I don't think Lake Victoria is salty because it doesn't attach to the ocean at all. Obviously, under the ground, all lakes, right? Right? Everything goes back to the ocean through aquifers, but if there's not you can't get in a boat in Lake Victoria and end up in the Indian Ocean. So, yes, yeah, no, Kisi, there's not as much rust either. We built in Meru. There's like no rust in Meru, but it's dustier in Meru, but there's no rust. So it really does depend on what's going on in the local environment. And the quality of the products, right? Because you can have 304 stainless steel, but the gauge is so low that it doesn't give you the same protection as the stainless steel that maybe you're used to, right? So if it's 304, but it's too low of a gauge and it's too thin, then it's still not going to give you the same protection that as like the higher gauge 304 stainless steel that you might be used to. So sometimes there's a quality concern there as well. What about Kitengala? Kitengala's okay. Kitengala's all right. We haven't have we built anything? No, we haven't built anything in Kitengala, but it's okay. I don't. I'm trying to think about like their medical landscape. I don't think they have like a national level hospital there. So if something bad happens, you're gonna need a medevac, just like the guy in Kisi. But it's not bad. It's not. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not like, remember I said some people, they'll find some like cheap thing. They'll be all this price oriented and all of that stuff. And so because of that, they'll go out in the middle of the bush and find something, and then the locals will not be friendly. Kitengala is not that, but like Turkana is, right? So there are different places where like if you just go up there, they're gonna be like, "Who are you? What do you mean you bought the land?" Like even though they understand land sales, they're not ignorant, right? Culturally, they're like, "Nah, this is Turkana land. Like we don't give a f that you bought this land and that you have the title deed. Like you're on our land." So different. There are different places where it's like, do you really need to deal with that? So most of those places you don't live there unless you're married in. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yesterday. Yesterday, my boy got sick out of nowhere, so we're panicking, right? And got him to the hospital. And when we got to the hospital, we could tell he was sick, but he hadn't done anything. No diarrhea, no fever. He had like a sweat that seemed to be cold, but no goosebumps, no nothing like that. And but he went right. So 2 minutes down the road, international level hospital. You know what I mean? We're there. He throws up in the hospital waiting room, and so we're like, "Oh, here we go." We get him back to the doctor. All the same stuff that you would expect, happens. Start getting ready for blood work, and then like, before we do blood work, like let's just give him a minute. Maybe it was just something that he ate. And that was the day after we did the Christmas dinner for all the employees. So we went to the construction site to do that, right? So we set up the banquet and all of that at the construction site. So it's possible he grabbed something, put it in his mouth. He's 21 months old. That's what they do. So threw up, and an hour later he was back, right? Running around, jumping, bouncing, all of that. He's fine now. But 5 minutes down the road, we were in that, and we passed another international hospital to get to our preferred international hospital. You know what I'm saying? So I understand what you mean. I also need to be close to a legitimate, hospital by my standards, right? No offense to anybody else, but I need to be able to take care of my family the way I need to be able to take care of my family. And so I'm with you on that. So those things those things don't work for me. And I've never seen anybody like make it work. Tons of people say they're going to, but I've never seen anybody do it. The people who are like price focused and they go out there in the middle of nowhere and get the super cheap, they always end up going back to America. They always end up broke, and they're either forced back to America by the government, which can happen, right? Or they go back voluntarily. Like it just fails for them. So if your focus is price, it will not work. Your focus has to be value. Doesn't mean you have to get the most expensive stuff. You have to be focused on value, getting value for the money that you spend, right? If you're only focused on price, you will fail. We've never, in 12 years, we've never seen someone succeed who is focused on price. So you already know that's what you're about. Just don't do it. As an expat, well, okay, I'll take care of that in a minute. As an expat, do you run into cultural hostility? Like you're a foreigner, why are you here? Okay, so I'm gonna answer that in a couple different ways. Number one, I'm not an expat. I've been an expat. I've been an expat multiple times, right? I'm not an expat. In fact, in a couple months, I'm going to get my dual citizenship. So I put in my time. I'm an immigrant. I've immigrated here. So they're two different things. Expats are temporary. If you're an expat, you're going back, right? So I lived in China for 2 years. As an expat, I knew I was not immigrating to China. I was going home, right? I lived in the Philippines as an expat. I knew I was going home, right? I lived in Europe as an expat. I've lived in a bunch of different places. Rodney Bay, St. Lucia, expat, right? I'm an immigrant. I've immigrated here. I'm not an expat. So very different, situation, right? I have employees here. You know what I mean? I give to the community and I create jobs and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the distinction. Yep. So there's that. All right. Beyond that, are there situations where it's like, oh, you're a foreigner, go home, da 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 da? I have not encountered that. But because we have the law firm, we have encountered folks, they're typically do-it-yourself immigration folks who have not consulted a professional. And they're also typically price buyers. So the only thing they care about is the cheapest everything. They will find a very cheap piece of land. And the reason the land is cheap is because it's in the middle of nowhere. There are no paved roads. There are no hospitals. There are no nothing. And so they can get it for $1,000, right? And so they go get that $1,000 piece of land and they've bought it. It's theirs. Maybe they're not scammed on the land. Oftentimes they are, by the way, but maybe they got lucky and they didn't get scammed. And the person that was living there was just like, you know what? I want to give up my acre. Pay $1,000. I want $1,000 for it, and I'm gonna sell it. And they sell it. Everything's legit. Sale goes through legit. Everything's legit. But because you're out in the middle of the woods, all right, it becomes like a hills have eyes situation. Same thing that would happen to you in the Black Hills of Kentucky, by the way, right? And the Black Hills of Virginia as well, right? Same thing. You move into those places. What y'all folks doing around here? Same thing, right? So those people in those boony areas, they're the what y'all folks doing around here, people, and you're going to deal with that, right? So, but we only see that with folks that are super price oriented and are doing it themselves. And they end up in the boonies with the hills have eyes. And them folks are looking at them like they small, like this every day, right? And so, but that's everywhere, right? It's not, a Kenyan thing, or we've seen that in China. You go out there in the boonies of China, there's a place in, what's it called? Donghui. There's a place called Donghui, and it's like on the border of Mongolia and China. And they raise reindeer, right? They ride them like horses, right? If you go out there and you have not married one of them to get out there, it's the same thing. They look at you the same way. Like, we don't care what you paid. This is our land, period, right? Same thing with like some of these native communities in the United States, like to the side of the hillbilly communities. Like, you go out there and you're not married to a native, right? Same thing. What are you doing here? This is our land type of thing. So yes, you can run into that, but only if you're making the worst possible moves that you can make for yourself. If you're dealing with a legitimate, immigration attorney or a legitimate relocation firm, they're never going to let you move to a place like that. It's another thing, and this is universal, when you're looking at land virtually anywhere. If the price is too good to be true, that's probably the truth. You need to figure out why the price is so low, what's going on around there, what are you going to deal with when you get there, right? And so, unless you're like an anthropologist and you don't learn like the local language and all of that, and you're going to engage in that way, it's never a good idea to go to those places. Those are places government don't go to. So you definitely ain't got no business going there, right? So, yeah, just make sure that you're just dealing with a professional. From that side, from the professional side, it's not a culture that's like foreigner go home like South Africa is, right? You're going to hear that in South Africa. You're going to deal with that in South Africa. That like they have a culture of that. Like I've been there on vacation. And people like, you ain't moving here, are you? No. Like, I ain't even want to come here. My wife wanted to come here, so we're here on vacation. Our return flight is in a week, But you get that in different places. Kenya is not one of them. Tanzania is a little bit like that as well, but it depends on whether or not you're in the SAR or not. SARs are always different, right? So you can never judge a country by its SAR. SARs are by definition different, right? So they're always different. So Hong Kong is an SAR. You cannot judge China by Hong Kong. Macau is an SAR. You cannot judge China by Macau. Monaco is an SAR. You cannot judge France by Monaco. Zanzibar is an SAR. You cannot judge Tanzania by Zanzibar, right? So any SAR is a completely different thing, right? It's set up, typically for tourists, but it's set up as a completely different thing. Good to know. Sometimes it's open season for Africa. I don't know of any place that like focuses on, because you can't tell. Like you can tell that someone's not from there, but you can't actually tell that they're African Americans, right? So for actually, it's very rare that someone guesses I'm American. They typically guess that I'm from a different African country because I dress different, whatever. But it's very rare that someone's like, oh, you're an African American. Very rare. Typically, they'll be like, oh, are you Ghanaian? Are you Nigerian? Are you... Well, yeah, because, for example, if you're American and you hear somebody speaking and they're speaking English, but they got a twang to their English, are they Australian or are they British? Right? If they're from the UK, are they Welsh? Are they Irish? Are they Scottish? Or are they British? Right? So unless you've had exposure, do you really know? Like, yes, they're not American, but can you actually pinpoint them, right? So it's the same thing when you go abroad. Like, they'll hear you and they'll be like, all right, the English is different. Kind of sounds like the movies, right? But like, is he American or is he Nigerian or is he Ghanaian or is he a black Brit or is he a black Australian? Like, so they really just don't know, right? So, but it's very rare that somebody's like, "Oh, you're American." Very rare. Typically, they're like, "Are you Ghanaian or Nigerian?" So I don't know anywhere where it's really like we're coming for the African American, because how they can't tell. They can only tell that you're not from there. They can't really tell where you're from unless you're walking around. Like when I like when I lived in China, I had a big leather jacket that said Team USA, because I used to fight in martial arts and I had this Team USA jacket. So everybody knew I was American because I literally had a billboard on that said USA. I seen somebody the other day here in Deani had a hat said USA on it, so everybody assumed they were American. But that don't necessarily make that true. They could have been a Nigerian with a USA hat on. so you know what, Henrock? I'm with you on that. Like the crazy xenophobia stuff, I only see that online. I've never experienced that in real life, with the exception of South Africa. Like they actually were asking me if I planned on moving there. Like that was a very different situation. But I've been all over the world. I've been to over 200 cities. I've been to over 80 countries. I wasn't even keeping track. Google told me. I got an alert from Google Maps that was like, "You've just visited your 200 city," and it had the list for me, which was actually kind of cool. But I've been around, and nowhere has anyone ever been like, "You ain't planning to move here, are you?" Except South Africa. So I don't know what's going on down there. But other than that, I'm with you 100%. I've like it. That's internet nonsense. What? Showcase. Man, everybody's doing talk to text today, ain't you? Everybody. Look at what you wrote and ask the question again, please. I do it too. When I'm busy or whatever, I do it too. I get it. I'm told people flirting. I've told people I'm flirting with moving to East Africa, and they think I'm crazy to leave America. On the is it the 30th? One of the lives coming up, I'm going to do an actual mathematical breakdown. It's more expensive to stay in America than move to Kenya. So you might lock into that live. Then you'll be able to show them. It's coming up. It's coming up in a couple of days. I'm going to break all that down. Depending on who you are, you might be crazy to stay. You know what I mean? I mean, there's certain people that America might be heaven for them. No problem. Stay there. But depending on your background, it might be crazy to stay. Well, yeah. So I get that. 100%. I get that. And it's not even just Africans, right? You'll get that everywhere. And what it is local people are boxed in. Same thing happens in the United States, right? The difference is in the United States, our boxes are structurally created by institutional racism, right? So really, really good example of that is in order to be in a real estate syndication, which is where all the biggest money in real estate comes from, okay? Which you've probably never even heard of because it's illegal for you to be involved. So in order for you to legally be part of a real estate syndication, definitely Google what that is because it's great if you can get into one. You need to be what's called a qualified investor by law. The SEC defines a qualified investor a couple different ways. But the most standard way is you have more than $1 million net worth, not counting your primary residence, right? So if you inherited a house from mom that she bought at $50,000 60 years ago, and now it's $1 million, that doesn't count. Right? It's set up to make sure that you don't sneak in, right? So $1 million net worth, not including your primary residence, you had to have made, and the number changes depending on whether you're married or not, but you have to have made 200,000 years for 3 years, the 2 years preceding the syndication and the year that you're going into the syndication, right? So if you won the Powerball last year, won $100 million, you do not qualify because you don't have the 3 years, right? So this is the way it's set up, right? If you don't meet that standard, you cannot join the syndication. Syndications give triple figure returns. If you're in a syndication, your total return on investment is oftentimes triple figures, okay? So like 300%. Right? 600%. You're not allowed, by law, you're not allowed to get involved, even if it only costs $10,000 to get involved and you're an RN making $120,000 a year. That ain't 200, is it? Right? What percentage of Americans make $200,000 a year? Less than 10, right? So, this is the way America is set up. Not a lot of people are even operating on the level to realize it, right? So the boxes that we're in are based on racism typically, right? And they're designed to keep certain people out of the money, right? But every country has their boxes. So the people in that country would be like, I'm so boxed in, I can't do nothing out here. Why do you want to come here? Right? And then America's real good with the marketing of, oh, if you just come over here, there's no boxes, which is bullshit, right? So everybody from where they're at is going to be like, no, why don't you do the American thing? I don't know why you're coming here. And then every American and every like Western person, by removing themselves from the country, they actually shatter quite a few of the boxes, right? So for example, there's something called XM Bank, EXIM Bank. Every country has one. America has one. It's a government-owned bank, which means it's financed by your taxes. You're not allowed to have a bank account at that bank. You're not allowed to do any banking with that bank, essentially until you leave, because it's an export-import bank. It's XM Bank. So once you leave, you magically have access to this bank that your taxes have been paying for the entire time you've been alive, right? But you can't touch it while you're still there for the most part. If you're importing, then maybe, right? But for the most part, you can't touch it while you're still in America, right? So leaving America actually gives you access to your own daggone tax money that you've been pumping into this bank all your life, right? So a lot of your barriers disappear, and that's why it actually makes sense. And that's why you get over here, you see all kinds of people that don't look like us making all kinds of money over here, because they're not bogged down, by the nonsense of, well, why would you do that? They're all trying to come over here. Why would you try to go over there? No, they're going where the money is. Their people ain't talking like that. Their people talking, go get that money and bring it back. So that's the way it really is. But folks that are not engaged and that only see the boxes that they're locked into, they always feel that way. And it doesn't really matter, which countries you're talking about. You're always going to get the same rhetoric from low-level people who don't understand, how international business works. So once you get out, you'll see. Most of our people double their net worth, if not triple it, within the first year. And within the first 5 to 6 years, they finally hit millionaire status. So, but it wasn't even on their trajectory while they were still in their host country. And it doesn't matter which country it is. It doesn't matter. Like our Canadian clients, our Caribbean clients, our U.S. clients, our UK clients. We had a group of Afro Swedes that came out. Like, it doesn't matter. We get a bunch of Chinese clients because we're a U.S. company. So we can't discriminate against, anybody on the basis of any protected class. So any racial type of person can come in, any protected class can come in. We will say no based on like people who have intentions to colonize or intentions to do, foul things that are not protected classes. We'll say no to those people. And we will say no to people who like are price buyers and they really can't afford it, themselves up for failure and all that. But we cannot say no based on a protected class. And so we have all kinds of clients that come through, and unfortunately, the people that look like us are the ones that believe in it the least. You know what I mean? The other folks, they know exactly what they're doing. They'll come through and be like, yep, I'm opening this. I'm here. I'm going to be a millionaire in a year. I know exactly what's about to happen, and they got no questions. They just need the process done. Our folks, on the other hand, it's a very different situation, and it's unfortunate. But they all talk that rhetoric while everybody else in the world is getting rich. They're concerned about things that don't matter. So it's unfortunate, but it is the truth. We hope it changes. We hope it changes soon. There's a lot of voices out there. There's a lot more voices now than when we started. So there's a lot of voices out there that are talking sense and are not, engaged in a bunch of BS and, online, weird wars between Africans and Americans and weird nonsense that only exists online. But you know what though, Henrock? Even though I don't like that mentality, it still works though. You know what I mean? Like that's not particularly the problem. We have clients that come out here on work permits and working that job still become millionaires within 5 years. You know what I mean? Like if you can work for Google, if you can work for Oracle, if you can, you know what I mean? If you can stomach corporate culture and stomach the fact that like people are not going to take you seriously and people are going to steal your ideas from time to time and like it's not always going to be fair and the favorite is going to get promoted above you. Like if you're cool inside that framework and you can still have like a forward, trajectory and an upward momentum, then do it. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. Not everyone has to be entrepreneurial, but you have to be in a place where you have upward mobility. You know what I mean? So it's but I get it. Like for me, that ain't gonna work. I've owned the business since I was 16, right? And I have worked in the lulls in between failed businesses, right? I've worked in corporate America and done stuff like that. But that's just not gonna do it for me, right? However, I probably would have been a lot further on, monetarily speaking, had I stayed with certain corporations where I excelled, right? Like that might have been a path for me to, increase monetarily speaking, right? And for some people, that's the right choice. I never knock that. Like I'm never like, oh, you're not a business owner. You're some kind of corporate slave or something like that. Like no, it's not for everybody. It truly isn't because I get paid last. All of my pay, I handed out. I'm not going to give the number. I handed out a lot of money in Christmas bonuses this year. You think I didn't get a Christmas bonus? I'm the boss, right? I gave a whole lot of free money out to people this year, as a holiday bonus. Ain't no holiday bonus came to me, right? Everybody gets paid before me. Being a business owner, they like to make it look cute on social media and make it look like you just drive around in Benzes all day and all of that. You do the most work, you get paid last. All right, and sometimes you don't get paid at all. Sometimes you got to not pay yourself so you can pay your own people if you're going through a slump. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's not for everybody, right? But it's just about having upward momentum. If you have no upward momentum, if you're not living up to your potential, if you're not getting the opportunities you should get, relocation typically helps, and it doesn't even matter where you go. For real. If you're the new kid on the block, you're typically put in a certain category that helps a lot, which is why you see like immigrants coming into the US and stuff. Sometimes they'll get certain hiring opportunities and managerial opportunities that like the local people don't get because they're a new kid on the block. There's no background. Nobody knows them, including the negative things about them, right? There's no negative stereotypes that necessarily attach to them unless you know something about where they're coming from, right? So all of these things give them like a clean slate and a bit of an advantage, and that's everywhere. You can also put yourself in a position to get that advantage. Are we hiring? We're not. Are we hiring? No, we're not hiring right now. We were hiring some assistants a little while ago, but I think we filled those. Do we hire Well, no, we contract with Kenyans, but we don't hire Kenyans because we're a U.S. company. So you'd have to have like a U.S. work permit. So we're a U.S. company that contracts with local contractors in Kenya. Um, but I happen to have ownership in those contractors. So we can enforce our standards on those contractors because we own them. But we can't like force them to hire anything, right? No. We're not the majority owner. We own, yes, but we're not the majority. We can't like force them to, hire whoever. They handle their own hiring. Yeah, well, we're shareholders. Is it true that 30K there is like 175 here in salary. It could be. It could be. So typically your affordability and like your cost of living is greatly affected by your housing. So that's why it makes a hell of a lot of sense to do your upfront investment in building your house and having your house, because once you have your house, your cost of living is damn near zero. It's crazy how low your cost of living could be. Like you could absolutely get by on 25,000 a month if you own your own house. Right? 25,000 local. Right? Not $25,000. 25,000 local. Right? Which is shit. I don't know, $200. Right? So, as a single person or even like a single mom with a kid, you could definitely get by on 25,000 local. I would recommend obviously that you had your shit together, right? So that means you have your emergency fund, so you have 6 months worth of, you know what I mean, and all of that set up. But how much easier is it for you to have 6 months when when your monthly cost of living is $200? Your 6 months is $1,200. It's probably less than what you're paying in rent right now in the United States, right? And your emergency fund is fully funded with the $1,200, right? So that's why when we do like our special, like the special that's going on now with the passive income, we target at 50,000. Right now, if you have a bigger family, maybe that's not enough, and we can adjust it. But we target 50,000 a month in passive income for the next 10 years. That means you don't have to work for 10 years just by moving over here, right? If you get that full package, right? So you own your house already and all of that. You're getting 50,000 a month paid, guaranteed by the government on a government guarantee through treasury bonds, right? And then, as those bonds mature, you get the initial money that you put into the bonds back. So it's not like stocks where you lose your initial investment into the stock. If the stock goes down, there ain't no going down on the coupon payment, and then you get your money back. Unless there's a sovereign default, right? That's the risk. That's the risk in treasuries. And if there's a sovereign default, that essentially means that the government collapsed, right? The country. So you got a whole lot more to worry about than whether or not you're getting your passive income if there's a sovereign default. But yeah, you have, guaranteed passive income for, at least the first 10 years, in which you should be able to make something else happen by then, right? So these are things that you can't accomplish in the United States until you're like 65, right? And even then, it doesn't work out all that great, where you can typically accomplish them now in a location coming, from the United States to here. Right? So there's just different opportunity. Well, yeah, the opportunity changes, because like those bond rates aren't going to last forever, right? So the clients that are moving through us right now, they're locking in that passive income that allow them to not work for the next 10 years. But somebody can show up next year at this time and all the bond rates be down to 7-8%, and it won't. That's not worth it. That's not viable, right? So right now, while the bond rates are 14, 12, 16%, it's viable, right? It's because the bond rates are actually higher than the S&P 500. So in that situation, it's highly viable. But, that can change like that. We don't think it'll change for the next year, but that's just our thought. Nobody knows. If you knew, you'd be rich, right? If you knew exactly what the bond rates were going to do, you'd be rich, and all the richest people on the planet would be paying you to make them rich. So nobody knows. But right now, it's been golden. We just had our end of year report for the clients that were bond laddering last year, and they were all ecstatic. Like, they're all having a great time. A lot of them are doing a second bond ladder. Like how I missed out on Bitcoin. Don't even get me started. Remember I said I lived in China. So I lived in China when Bitcoin started. right? And I knew about Bitcoin in China. Like I seen the original when they were mining Bitcoin. When I found out about it, they were using CPUs to mine Bitcoin. There was no GPU Bitcoin mining at the time. And I had a business collapse. I literally came back broke. I was like homeless. And I was like telling all the people who knew me, mine this damn Bitcoin. And um they were making analyses based on like electric bills. Like, well, if I mine Bitcoin, I get so many Bitcoin a day. Bitcoin, right? They were getting entire Bitcoins a day back then. I get so many Bitcoins a day, but it costs me so much a month in electricity, and so it's not worth it. Right? That's what they were saying. And I was literally homeless at the time. Like I had just, the whole business had just collapsed, whatever. And that's the difference between being a business owner and an entrepreneur. By definition, an entrepreneur has an extraordinary financial risk associated with the business. A business owner does not. They just own a business, right? So like now, if a business fails, I'm not homeless. So I'm a business owner. Like my entrepreneur days are done. But as an entrepreneur, it puts you in a situation where you have an extraordinary financial risk if, you know, that business goes under. So I was an entrepreneur at the time. And you want to set up a situation, by the way, where your kids don't have to be entrepreneurs, but I digress. So a business had just catastrophically failed, and I was literally homeless, wasn't, able to mine any daggone thing. And all the people I was telling about it were like laughing, or there was a guy who was kind of into it, but he was like, "Oh, I pay too much of my electric bill. Like, I'm not doing that." Blah 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 blah. And all of those guys call me all the time now, and they're like, "I would be a billionaire had I listened to you on Bitcoin." And I'm pissed off because had I not been homeless, I would be a billionaire because I believed in Bitcoin from the jump. Right? What's all that? You all right? Huh? Say hi to the people. Hi. Go see Auntie Sada. Hmm? You want to stay here? Okay, you can stay here. So yeah, that's the way that worked out. But yeah, man, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. So yeah, you definitely don't want to miss this. This definitely has given. Are you good? Huh? What's all this coughing about? Hmm? You all right? You okay? You're not talking today? All right. But yeah, definitely don't want to miss out on this. This gave me lasting stability, right? Like we target 10% and we target 10 years. We do that as a safety gap, right? No one's actually made as low as 10%. Most people are closer to 14. 10 years, yes, but like for me, we're at like 30 years, right? For the folks that we just did, the end of year report for, most of them are closer to 20 years than they are 10 years, right? And so the stabilizing effect that has had, I I find it hard to put into words, right? You're just good. You're not concerned about money. It does not matter anymore. And we have people laddering in their businesses so that they don't have to keep bootstrapping their businesses. The businesses are paying for themselves. We got a ton of people that are not relocatees, but they're just doing their generational wealth with those ladders. And so their compounding is through the roof. We're doing that as well. We have a separate ladder personally that compounds for his trust fund. And so he's good to go. His net worth might be more than mine at this point. So he's good to go. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful thing, but it's not going to last forever. Right. And so we'll probably even try to get another ladder before it all dies. But, the stabilizing effect that passive income has is amazing. Amazing. So definitely worth doing it. Especially if you got these guys that you got to take care of. Definitely put them in a good position. Are you leaving? Is that a bye-bye? Are you done with the meeting? Meeting adjourned?
Why?
Bye. All right. Any other questions? Looks like he's wrapping it up for me. Any other questions on any of this? So how much to secure the bonds in a for right now? If you want the bonds and the trust, you're looking at 85,000, and you'll have a full ladder. So that'll be a full ladder that's targeted at 50,000 local per month, and that should be at least 10 years. Uh-oh. Bye bye. Bye bye. What are you having for breakfast over there? The governess has shown up to feed him. He asked no questions. He jumped down right away. You seen that? Yes, she's a living governess. Yep, she lives here. No, her only focus is him. Yeah. Yeah, well, we don't want her like focusing on like clean. So the maid is in charge of everybody though, because her focus is him. So if she sees something that affects him the wrong way, she can tell anybody who works here, stop doing that, do this, you know, or stop using that cleaning solution because it irritates him. So yeah, she's in charge. 85 is land and permit. Also not land. It is permit. Definitely, it's permit. So it includes immigration. It would include a trust, and it would include a bond, right? Our special does have land and it has construction. So the special is 185 because you get a house. So you get a 1,600 square meter house. It's actually more than 1,600 square feet. Sorry, not meter. Square feet. 1,600 square foot house. It's actually more than that. And you get a 50 by 100 plot of land, and then you get your immigration, and then you get your tax compliance, and then you get all the other stuff, and your trust fund, and the bond ladders, and all of that. But yeah, the 85 it does not have land. It's permit. You will get your immigration. So it does have the permit and the immigration, and it does have the tax compliance and all of that. The trust fund, and then the bond ladder. Oh, that's I'm not going to tell you how much I pay. She gets paid very well, but that's up to her. She wants to disclose her paycheck. Yeah, no, I wouldn't put her on blast like that. You know, she cousins show up. You put people on blast like that, and all of a sudden, cousins who have never called you show up. I hear you're making this a month. Can you loan me this? Can you loan me that? Like, that's inappropriate. We unfortunately though, the downside of us paying very well is that we end up losing clients. That's why not clients, employees. That's why certain places pay lower to keep employees. We don't really like that concept, so we don't do it. But it does suck because we pay well enough that people can like work for us for like 2 years and then, which is great. We're happy for them, but at the same time, the job is, to be with the kid. It sucks for the kid to be attached to you and then you leave and then we have to replace you and then, get it going again and all of that. So that happens, unfortunately. It's not inconvenient enough for us to like low pay people. So we still pay them top dollar. And then they typically in about 2 years, like they can afford to go buy their own house and go open their own business, and which is what they do. Is she? Yes, she is doing that. Yep. We're gonna have a new governess show up probably in like a week, and so we took her to China with us. She flew first class, same as us, and stayed in the same hotels as us, and blah 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 blah. So we never treat governesses any different than ourselves. And we introduced her. She wanted to do a business. She wanted to do a shoe store, so we introduced her to suppliers over there and all of that. So she's ready to start her own company, which is great. Sucks for the baby. He's gonna miss her, but we don't stand in anybody's way as far as moving upwards in life. And if we can help, we will. It just is what it is. Well, I mean, I think it depends on how long you've been in business and at what level of business you're operating. A lot of people think that way, but in my experience, you actually do better because now all of those people that you didn't stand in their way and you didn't low pay them and you did give them an opportunity to go become whatever they wanted to become, they're all part of your business network now, right? So, you know, now there's another business owner who's also doing, imports from China for their business, the same way that we are when we're bringing in things. So now, let's say we have an issue. Somebody wants to build a house, but we only have one house being built. And so the things that they need to build their house don't fill an entire container. And we need an entire container to come from China to be able to clear it at the docks in an equitable way where we don't need to raise prices on the client. So now we have another business owner, right, that we assisted in getting into business that we're friendly with, who's also importing things from China, right? So now we can team up with them and be like, okay, cool. Are you importing anything anytime soon? All right, we only have half a container that we need to build this house, but we need a full container in order to make it cost effective. How about your next, order of shoes? If you have half a container of shoes, we put them together and we bring that in and we don't have to increase any prices to our clients, right? So I guess it just depends on your view, how long viewed you are, how short viewed you are. For us, it's better for us to just go ahead and invest in employees actually, outgrowing us and then increase our professional network versus low paying people and trying to hold them down so that we can use them, longer. So it just depends on your business philosophy. But for us, yes, it sucks that she's leaving, but we have no problem assisting her in that and hope that she does great in her own business. And we'll support her if we can. Any other questions on any of that? How much? Not that much today. I've only drank a liter, 1 liter so far. This is the next half a liter. I've only had a liter so far. I try to do 4 liters a day. I rarely get to it. The best I do is typically 3. Working on it though. Incremental discipline. Anything else? Any other questions today? I have to look at the calendar. I don't even know what tomorrow is. I got to look at the calendar. I think though December 30th is going to be an analysis on why it is costlier to stay in the U.S. than it is to relocate to Kenya. That's going to be a good one. Any other question? Looks like we're good to go. So I think I'm about to wrap up the 4 lives. Looks like there are no more questions. All right, looks like we're good. Thanks for hanging out with me, Freedom Family. I will see you tomorrow, same time, right around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's right around 6 a.m. my time. Sometimes I come on a few minutes later because, like, for example, sunrise here was at 6:05 today, right? So if I came on at 6 a.m., it would just be dark for 5 minutes. So sometimes I'm a couple minutes after, and that's based on nature. So I will see you guys tomorrow night if you're in the U.S., like the vast majority of my viewing audience is. And if you are over here and watching from Kenya, I will see you tomorrow morning. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll see you tomorrow.